I'm Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time.
Welcome to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
I preempted me. So thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time as we help you live God's Word in today's world, helping you when the headlines hit home. And as we've said before, they hit home ever faster these days. So much going on. A couple of video, we're going to talk about health care, Obamacare, Unaffordable Care Act, all of the above, and the aftermath we're now facing. We'll be talking about that with someone who has been in the insurance industry, helping folks afford and find premiums in which they can survive with and live with and find coverage, hopefully, that would be enough for their families. Also, somebody from the small employer perspective and seeing employees, one, whether they can offer something or not, and whether it's worthy of the plan and how it fits in lives today. Before I head there, a scripture verse, I wish I would have brought I have my own concordance that I've made up over time with topics, because, you know, when you're looking for a scripture verse, the word you want may not be in there, but it may talk about the subject. And so I have several on health care and welfare and trusting the Lord and Him being concerned about our health. But I didn't bring those with me. As you know, it's political season, and I'm extremely busy right now. And got back in at 2:30 in the morning last night and put things together, but didn't think about grabbing that list. But as God would have it, someone sent me on Facebook a scripture that I think is worthy of posting, and I think it fits. 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God. At the right time, He will lift you up in honor, and He will all your worries. He'll take care of all your worries. Give all your worries and God to Him. I couldn't read my own writing, sorry. Give all your worries and cares to Him. Man, if that's not good scripture just for everything we're dealing with, one, with health care, two, politically, and three, just our busy schedules. So 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. And it's easy to remember, 5, 6, 7. But turn everything over to Him, and He will help you with it. Recap of the activities. Of course, we had the presidential election debate on Wednesday night. It was a debate, and it was mixed. Everybody, you know, her team says she wins, but I've heard a lot of news resources saying that Trump did very well. He pivoted very well, and that he had done incredible, and that then they all pounce. It's like they're waiting. It's like in their headsets, you can hear them say, "There's the line we're going to pounce on." They pounced on the line that he said he wasn't sure he would take the outcome of the election. He was not sure. Now remember, the very first debate on the stage in Cleveland, when they asked if you'll get behind the candidate, he was hesitant, to which he was greatly mocked and scolded and belittled. And afterward, we saw some who have yet to fulfill their oath that they so quickly put their hand up to take, haven't yet gotten behind the candidate, and he, with his wisdom, might have known a little bit better than to just give his word and not mean it. I think there's a scripture, a story that talks about the two brothers, the two sons, and one said he would do something and didn't get it done, and the other didn't want to do it, but yet ended up doing what was right. So I think that's kind of the parallel of the wisdom there in Trump and his hesitation. So here with the election, he has hesitation, and the pundits are all calling it political suicide, and yet when you get back into the mainstream America, they're saying no. We've all sensed it for a while. We feel like something's up. We feel like there is a rigging with the system. We hear stories where a governor was elected. I believe Rush Limbaugh talked about it this morning in Washington and got more voters. We hear continued stories in counties. We see the Veritas tapes. We have an unrest. And so once again, I think the voters are sensing that Donald Trump does not belong with the establishment. He's not with the elite. He's not with the embedded Washington types. And he is going to stand and fight for the people. And so if you're already upset because I said that to you, I want you just to think it through. I want you just to reflect back on it. And maybe at the end of the show, I'll come back and just really take you off too, because I may finish that story out. Let's get to our guest in studio. Lowell Scott is here. Lowell Scott is a small business owner. That would be the way to.
That'd be correct.
That'd be correct. And on the phone line is Guy Lowry. Hello, Guy.
Good morning, Tamara.
How would I best describe you, Guy? Insurance agent? How would you like me to tell our listeners?
Oh, insurance agent, insurance broker, cheap bottle washer.
How long have you been selling insurance?
Oh, 15 years, I suppose.
I know you used to come on the show with me back another station ago, and you would talk to our listeners before Obamacare was ever enacted. You were warning us of the dangers. You were warning us about premium increases, lack of care, lack of choice.
That is correct.
And I remember, and I that was 2 computers ago, and so I cannot easily get to the document, but I remember warning people. It seems like they thought fast food restaurants, similar to a McDonald's, it would cost each one of them another, the cost was phenomenal per employee each year, but even families, they said the cost would go up $12,000 a year. And I'm thinking families can't afford that. Is that happening?
Oh, much more than that.
It's costing families more than $12,000 a year?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So
it costs me, if me and my wife, I am on a grandmother plan, which is the plan that we're kind of sitting waiting to see if we have to go into the new ACA plan and which will happen at the end of 2017. Currently, me and my wife, we're paying for a minor HSA plan, and it's costing us roughly $850 a month. Okay, if we had to try to get that plan on the open market with Obamacare now, it costs us roughly $2,100 a month.
$2,100 a month.
Yeah.
Every month.
Every month. And that's just her and me. That's not counting the family.
That's just your premiums?
That's just my premiums.
What about deductibles?
The deductible will go up a little bit more than what I have now, but it was still a very benefit-rich plan.
So I don't want to be personal here. Apparently you and your wife could afford this new jump in increase, but what about all the families that can't?
Well, that's it. We're going to see, the administration and everything, and CMS, which is in control of all this, is saying, we're at the all-time low for the uninsured. And we're going to see that dramatically change in the next few years. And we're going to see it turn around and go up. And I predict that we'll have more uninsured at the end of 2018 than what we've ever had. But it'll be a different geographic amount of people. Instead of the people on the small that are possibly, on the lower end of the poverty level being uninsured, you're going to have the ones that are in that 400, 500% of the poverty level that turn around and say, I've been paying $1,000 a month for my insurance. I'm not going to pay $2,500 a month. I'll just do without.
And
I'll self-insure.
And so used to we could self-insure. I knew people who self-insured, and if you had the means, it's certainly not a bad idea. But anymore, I don't think you can do that. Can you?
Well, there's a loophole in the system because of the fact that you can go and get insurance any open enrollment period regardless of your health conditions. And so really, if you self-insure yourself, all you have to do is self-insure yourself for roughly 11 months out of the year. For 1 year. Because if you became unhealthy, let's say in the month of January, all you got to do is make it to next January and enroll into one of Obama's plans because they have to date.
A guy that's Lowell, isn't that kind of like buying car insurance after the accident?
Yes, it is. And that's why the insurance companies are having such a big issue. Because to start with, the CMS never governed any of the special enrollment periods. And people were buying insurance to get a knee replaced or a hip replaced, and they were lying on the application and saying, I just lost my job, whatever. And CMS wasn't following up to make them confirm that. And the insurance company was having to go ahead and cover those claims. Well, last year, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, in 2015, I think it was, or they had like 17 claims that cost them $4 million. And this year they've had 300 claims that's cost them $47 million because of those special enrollment periods. Well, CMS started in about March, I guess, started to tighten the ropes on that. And so now when you turn around and buy a plan, you have to prove you've lost that coverage. You have to prove some stuff, and they're not allowing people just to come in. So yes, you're right. That is kind of grabbing it after you become out.
And so for our listeners, what is CMS?
CMS is they're the ones that control everything. They're care management system or something like that. Is the central Medicare system. They're the ones that do Medicare. They're the ones that do everything.
Okay, so say they figure out that you indeed didn't have a plan that you were coming off of. So then what do?
Cancel your coverage.
Well, what happened to...
They cancel your subsidy.
Your subsidy.
You can always get coverage, but you can't always get help paying for it.
Who all gets that subsidy?
Who all gets that? Anybody under the 400% poverty level and over 138% poverty.
So
anybody under that 138% poverty goes to Medicaid.
So in essence, we now have socialism.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Because you're paying the insurance premiums for somebody else who supposedly can't afford them, and because of the poverty level, is poverty level on income level or is it on acquisitions and property levels? Because I see a lot of people who are supposedly on Medicaid, Medicare, whatever program you want to call it. They've got the latest iPhone. They've got their nails are neatly manicured. They can afford the tanning booth. They can afford all those things that I don't feel like I can do.
It's off of your annual income. It has nothing to do with your asset or your net worth.
So if I do something that doesn't go through the IRS, cash under the table, I'm good.
That's right.
Which is what bad law does. Bad law promotes bad behavior.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if you're self-employed, it goes off of after you've taken your business expenses off. And most of us that are self-employed, by the time we get through, and just like Mr. Trump did, he used the tax laws to his favor to run his business, like we all do, and it shows that we basically didn't make very much money after we do the way the tax laws are written.
That's right. A lot of times they don't. I do want to touch on that. We had a guest come last week, Matt Wagner with the Taxpayers Association, and even Trump didn't defend himself. You can tell he's not a politician because he didn't defend himself. In that year, those years where they say he didn't pay any, what was it? What tax?
Federal
income tax. He'd still paid commercial tax, property tax, sales tax, employee tax. And then this Matt went through it and just looking online, the information that he could gather, it was a very conservative estimate, probably 34,000 employees, I think, all along. And he said if you just figure out what he paid for their taxation as an employer, but what they paid then in taxes, income tax, property tax, sales tax, all those other taxes that hit us every day. He said it was probably in a very conservative bid, $500 million a year. So they can fuss about him not paying that income tax, but $500 million was probably put into the IRS, not to mention back into the economy. We thought those folks are spending at the grocery store, spending at the mall, and reviving and just stirring in their own local economies across the nation or wherever those employees lived. So he didn't even defend himself very well on that. But I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to hit back on that. And he still hasn't hit the fact that Hillary Clinton helped pass those laws along with the bad inheritance laws that will greatly impact farmers here. The century farmers we have, who've given the farms over for years in the century, will lose that as they have to sell property to keep it. You hear the music. We've got to go to break. We're talking with Guy Lowry. We're talking about insurance. And I want you to stay tuned because Guy has already told me a couple of things we're going to talk about. Young professionals and how you will be impacted, along with Lowell Scott, small business owner. Stay tuned. Truth for Our Time, 99.3 FM, Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. You sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And you're listening to Tamara Scott. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to producer Maddie for being behind the glass today. Appreciate that, as Goose is on vacation with his family. So we're talking about healthcare. We're talking about the aftermath of where we are now as Americans dealing with this. And Guy, I want to come back. I know I just mentioned the young professionals, but hold on to that thought. We'll come back to that in a moment. But you had we'd been talking about the subsidies for those folks who can't afford it. They still can't afford it, and now they get fined for not affording insurance?
Yeah, basically, if you don't purchase insurance through the ACA plan or any for 2 months or greater, you will be assigned a penalty, and it's 2.5% of your gross.
So hold on right there. Why isn't it just a fine? Why not just a fine? Why do they come after your income? This is the greed of the government. This is predatory government.
That's correct. But there is a loophole in that system.
You and your loopholes.
Well,
you need to start a blog, Lowry's Loopholes.
Well, I do all I can for my clients. My whole deal is I try to, I work for my clients. I don't work for an insurance company. And there's ways that sometimes you have to kind of work the loopholes. And one of those loopholes is that the fine that they give you is only collected. The government can only collect that fine if you're getting money returned to you for a refund. Okay, they cannot force you to pay that fine. If you don't pay the fine, they can turn around and say they're not going to give you any more subsidies. So in the future, but let's take the farmer, let's take the professional that is having to pay in every year, and he decides he's going to become self-insured, and he says, I'm not going to do this. Well, they're going to try to give him a fine, but since they cannot force him to pay that fine, he just thumb his nose at him and say, go away. I'm not going to do it. And then all they can do is turn around and say, we're not going to give you a subsidy in the future. Well, I'm not getting one now, so what difference does it make?
And so if he ever came to the point where he would get a tax return, would they keep part of that tax return?
Yes, they would.
Which is his money. So again, it's predatory government. It's overreach.
If you go back to the very beginning of Obamacare, it was essentially a fraud from the very beginning. It has, I think, between 15 and 20 different ways it raises revenue. Under the originations clause in the Constitution, all of those bills must originate in the House of Representatives. This bill did not. They took a bill that was passed by the House regarding military housing, stripped all the language out of it in the Senate, attached all the language, what we now know as Obamacare, and passed it in the Senate, sent it back to the House. The House passed it, 219 to 212. Every single Republican voted against it. And they agreed, Pelosi agreed, we won't make any changes because then it would have to go back to the Senate and be passed again. In the meantime, Edward Kennedy dies, Scott Brown gets elected, so they only have 59 votes. And so what they made a deal, we'll send it back as all the changes in a separate bill so that we still don't have 60 people to pass it. So they changed the rules. I mean, they literally were on record as saying we're making up the rules as we go along in order to get this thing passed.
Just like you have to pass it to see what's in it.
Exactly. And then it went to the Supreme Court, as we all know, and they ruled it constitutional. But there was a separate suit saying you can't even hear this case because nobody's paid the tax yet. And so there is no remedy. Nobody needs a remedy because nobody has actually been injured by this because nobody's paid the tax yet. You have to wait until somebody actually has a injury before you can provide a remedy. And so Chief Justice Roberts said, it's a penalty. And so consequently, we can hear the case because it clearly states it's a penalty. And then he went on in the majority and the best of the decision and said, if it was a penalty, it would be unconstitutional. But it's not a penalty. It's a tax. And consequently, Congress does have the power to levy a tax, and hence it's constitutional. So when they talked out of both sides of their mouth, this whole thing from the get-go was just a way to take control by the government of 1/6 of our economy.
Okay.
I agree.
So, Guy, I was honored to attend the debate between Grassley and Patty Judge in Sioux City on Wednesday. And I'll give her credit for showing up because it was a flood of blue Grassley shirts and a lot of support for Grassley. But here she came and she said, one, it was frightening to me how disconnected she was from Iowans. But she said, this Obamacare is great for the young professionals. It's a step forward. And I found myself thinking, wait a minute, step forward when my parents were 20 years old, were already a healthy couple living in the home they owned, productive, giving back to their community. And that was age 20, by the way. And now you have kids who are 26 years old living in their mom and dad's basement and forced to be on Obamacare because they can't be on their own. Most kids would rather be on their own. And we have one who refuses to be on Obamacare and will pay her own way. But this is not a step forward. But her excuse, it was good for young professionals. Is it good for young professionals?
No, it's actually just the opposite. It's very unfair to the young, very unfair. And I, yesterday after our conversation, I went home and I kind of did some little figures for you, kind of to give you some ideas to show you how unfair and unequal it is compared to everybody else. The whole thing is stemmed off of the poverty level, okay? And I ran a Dallas County. I used Dallas County, and I used a 25-year-old in Dallas County, and I used 230% poverty, which is $27,000 a year. Now, you take a young professional, that's only $13 an hour. He's gone to college and everything. I hope he's doing that. In today's economy, sometimes we wonder. But by doing that, he's going to get a 12% subsidy. So he's going to get paid 12% to help pay for his insurance. So the government's going to pay 12% of his insurance bill, and which is only $26 a month. That they're going to pay. So he's going to end up paying $202. Now I can remember just a few short years ago that same 25-year-old I could have done for like $45 a month. On the private sector.
Right.
But you turn around and take a 50-year-old doing the same thing. He's making $27,000 a year. He now gets a 44% subsidy. Now we all know that as we get older, our health goes up and cost goes up. We understand that. But why does he get? Why wouldn't it be the same percentage poverty level. I mean, if they're using 230% poverty, and if they figure it's 40%, it shouldn't be 40% for the young as much as it is 40% for the old that should get a subsidy.
Part of me wants to be hopeful that maybe they're starting to respect our seniors and our elders, but I don't think so. And how much more could that young professional use that money, because they've got car payments, they probably want a down payment on a house, they may be hoping to start a family, and we know they're just smothered under student loans if they've got any degree whatsoever. So
Plus they don't have any tax loopholes. There's my old loopholes again. I'm going to take that 50-year-old. Even though he's showing he's only making $27,000, he's using the system, he's using the loopholes and everything. He might be making a lot more than that, but his taxes show he's only making $27,000. Well, the young professional is 25 years old. He doesn't have earned income credit. He doesn't have anything yet.
not to mention, it probably doesn't help a lot of these folks, even those without the college, are getting their hours cut so that their employers aren't forced into providing insurance that they can't afford for their employees.
Yeah, that's a different ball game all by itself. When you get into the small business, then that becomes a different issue all by itself. All the problems that they're having and how they're.
Well, it's incredible. It's a mess. I mean, because even the formulas to determine what size employer you are incredibly complex. You have to figure out the number of full-time employees that you have, which is those who average 30 hours or more per week. And then you have to add to those what they call FTEs, full-time equivalents, which is where you add up all of your part-time employees and divide it by a certain number, and 120, I believe it is, and that takes that down. Then you add that to your full-time employees, and whatever that number comes up will determine whether you have 50 or more employees. Even though you may have 110 employees total, you may have less than 50 employees under their formula. But if you have between over 99 to 100 or more, then you're a very large employer. And if you have between 50 and 99, then you're still a large employer, which means if you don't provide health insurance, where you pay a majority of the cost and the employee contributes some, that then you pay a penalty instead. And that penalty, the first 30 employees you have are considered free, but after that, it's anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 per employee. And when you figure that up, it can cost you $100,000 in penalty, for which you get nothing. So it's designed to be an incentive. The problem is when you begin to offer the plan, which we did on our business a few years ago, a number of our employees then lose their subsidy, because they have an availability to buy a plan that's qualified under the rules, and consequently they say, yeah, but it's going to cost me this much a month through you, and I lose my subsidy, which they don't want to lose.
So as a taxpayer, should I like that because they're coming off the tax rolls somehow on the subsidy? They're being forced to stand on their own?
In my position, I don't think it's the government's business, because it's also a disincentive. Because if the employer doesn't want a lot of full-time employees, they'll trim hours. And so somebody who was getting 40 hours, all of a sudden you're trying to keep them under 30. And so they get 4 days a week. They get 28 hours, so it hurts them. And if you have 45 employees, it's really an incentive not to grow. I mean, all these things are contributing to why we see our stagnation in our economy, because if you grow past 40 or get into 50 or more, you're going to be subject to Obamacare. And if you stay less than 50 of employees, then you are exempt from it. And
I don't even know if we want to get in this here, but if you were to subdivide your company, you can't work with relatives, or you can't work with a company that's owned by a relative?
No, I mean, I looked at that. If let's say I took one division of the company and put it into a separate company, totally separate. If it's owned by a relative, then they say, well, you're still controlled by you. And consequently, we're going to treat it all as one. So that's what they want you to do. They're trying to keep it all together so that they can control it.
I'm talking with Lowell Scott, small business owner, and Guy Lowry, who's been in the insurance industry for quite some time, trying to help Iowans do the best they can for their dollar and get the best coverage possible. We're talking about Obamacare, Unaffordable Care Act, and the horrendous side effects that are hampering business. And we're hearing not just the economy that it's stifling and the lack of jobs that are being created, but but what it's doing to the economy, period. And we've got to go to break. We'll be right back with both of these gentlemen. There's more talking about young families who are going to be having kids. You don't want to miss this one either.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thanks for staying tuned. You are listening to Truth for Our Time, helping you live God's Word in today's world. I'm talking with Lowell Scott, small business owner, and Guy Lowry, who has been in the as an insurance agent and a broker, trying to help Iowans find the best quality care for the best cost and effectiveness and efficiency for years. So we were just talking about the economy. And I mean, I'm assuming not just one in job creation. This is what I think most Americans are seeing with the Donald Trump versus a Hillary Clinton, who's never made a dime outside of taxpayer monies in the last 30 years. But he has hired, fired, and created many great empires in which people now have work. And so he's talking about the stifling of the income, and you're, Lowell, talking about people losing their jobs, getting their hours cut because employers aren't hiring past a certain amount because your government is now telling you how big your business can be. That just blows my mind. Or who can be related, or who can work to what, how you can work with what businesses.
We've seen it in even in cities that have implemented, and here in Polk County, Des Moines now, they're talking about raising the minimum wage through legislation instead of letting the market determine that. But you take a restaurant, for example, and they have a large number of employees. It's the service industry. And they say, okay, now you have to pay a minimum of $15 an hour. Well, one of the first things you see is you don't have near as many employees.
Right.
People cut service levels in order to maintain their cost. The second thing is related to Obamacare is if they're providing the insurance, that employee, all of a sudden now that wage drives it up with what they're making. And so that will affect their subsidy as well. And then if the employer provides coverage, then they lose their subsidy, even if they don't take advantage of it. They may say, well, I can't afford the insurance you're offering. But it doesn't, the laws, regardless of that, because it was offered, they lose their subsidy. And so they may at this point find it cheaper to pay the penalty. And most of them are not figuring out a way to avoid the penalty. They are looking forward to a big tax refund at the end of the year, and all of a sudden they find a big chunk of it's gone, and those penalties increase over time.
You're killing incentive. You're killing job creation. You're hindering the economy. This is what Trump is talking about. Beyond that, what does it cost between federal and state employees to navigate, instigate, investigate?
Well, I some numbers I saw that said over the first decade of its implementation, it's going to cost over $800 billion with a B, billion dollars, and in cost to the government, to taxpayers. The government has no money other than what they take from taxpayers. The problem with the hindrance to the economy is just one factor. The hindrance to people's lives out of their pocketbook every month. I had a Facebook friend who I saw, he posted just in the last 2 days that his family plan is now costing him $1,800 a month with its new increase, and that's if he raised the deductible to a $10,000 a year deductible. So he's paying, and he usually hits his deductible because he has several children. That's costing him $30,000 a year just in health care cost, which is why he and his wife are both working their tails off trying to make ends meet.
Because if a couple wants to be self-sustaining and provide for their families, what this government is doing is now forcing more people into subsidies and to be dependent upon a government, which is not what we want. It's not healthy. It's not good for the individuals. They don't want to do that. This is just extremely poor policy all the way around.
Exactly. And in the beginning of the show, you commented as the Unaffordable Care Act, and that's exactly what it's become. And I think Guy more than I have seen the premiums ever increasing, and then every time you get an increase, you get an option of, well, do you want to raise your deductible in order to try and keep the premium down as low as you can? And it's really a trade-off, and then how they apply the deductibles isn't fair either.
Guy, you had mentioned to me, and I want our listeners to hear this, for those families out there who are considering having a children, they've done things properly, they're married, they're trying to get a home if they don't already have one, they're trying to do things in the right order under a godly method. And now this is, as you say, even more devastating to a young family. Take us through that scenario.
Well, the law has 10 elements that you have to have. And maternity is one of them. Everybody that buys an ACA plan has a maternity is covered. Now, it says maternity is covered, but they don't say how good it's covered. That's the kind of a little thing that kind of irks me. In the old days, we had plans, they Blue Cross Blue Shield that had maternity on it. The mother, regardless what your deductible was, it was a maximum out of pocket of another $1,000. And when the mother went in and had her baby into the hospital, the baby was underneath the mother's umbrella. So it was classified all as one. So when that baby went into the NICU unit or whatever, he was underneath the mother's deductible maximum out of pocket. Okay, unless the baby was dismissed from the hospital and then readmitted into the hospital, well, then it would have its own deductible. But before that, it was always underneath the mother's umbrella. Now, going forward underneath Obamacare, The minute the baby is born, it is its own identity. It has its own deductible. So if a mother has a plan that has a $3,000 deductible with a $6,300 maximum out of pocket, for example, that baby, so just on the easy figures, they're going to have a $3,000 for her and a $3,000 for the baby right off the bat. So you got $6,000 on a normal maternity that costs $10,000.
Wow.
You know, so, and then if there's any complications in there, they're looking at $12,000, $13,000 they possibly have of expenses to have a baby, where it used to be maybe $1,500.
And this is even after they have coverage, but these are uninsured expenses or that they're out of pocket that they have to pay.
That is correct.
This is maddening to me. These couples are trying to do it right, and you've got that money that could go into an account. It could go for a down payment for a house. We're talking $12,000 to possibly have a child. The foolishness of this, when we have birth rates that are decreasing, and we know that the economy decreases when the birth rate decreases, again, bad policy produces bad impacts on society. All the way around, this is just horrific. And I can see now we have home births rising anyway, but now you'll see many more people trying home birth because they're afraid of what may happen at the hospital. And it's one thing if that's a choice, but we're seeing a decline in health care overall because people are not wanting to face these high bills, high deductibles.
Well, I want to go back and stress on one thing. Well, you made a comment about it's bad for the economy and how it's stifling the employer. And I see it on the individual side how it is stifling growth. From trying to make more money. They get up to the 400% poverty level, and they go, well, for me to make, you take a husband and wife that are 62 years old, let's say, and they're making $62,000. That's kind of the cap of the deal of the 400% poverty. Their premiums on their insurance, if they got $1,000, if they made $1,000 more a year, would cost them. They would lose their subsidy, and it would cost them $12,000 more in premiums because they lose their subsidy. So therefore, they don't try to make that $1,000.
So if they get a $1,000 raise, it could cost them $12,000 in premiums?
Yes, and I had that happen to I had that firsthand. I had that happen to a couple that was working for a small businessman, and this is the American way, and I'm kind of proud to say this because they were working for a small businessman, and they were going to make $62,000, and they got a raise for like up to $64,000. Well, it was going to cost them so much more money in order to do that, to get that raise. They were going to lose their subsidy and everything. This couple went back to their small employer. They told their small employer what was going on, and he says, well, that's wrong. He says, I'll just give it to you in an IRA.
Perfect.
So he turned around, took the money away from them, gave them to an IRA, which then did not show the income for them, and they still kept their subsidy. Now, not every employer will do that, but that's what I do.
Talking with Guy Lowry, Lowell Scott, we're talking about the aftermath of Unaffordable Care Act on you as Iowans. Stay tuned. More after this. Truth for Our Time. 99.3 FM, Webcast One Live.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards.
If you help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here at webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And you're listening to Truth for Our Time. This is Tamara Scott, sitting with Lowell Scott, small business owner, Guy Lowry, one of your insurance brokers, your local guys who are trying to help you get the best for your dollar. Amazing story. We just heard couple, mixed income, $64,000, gotten a $1,000 raise, and they were going to be penalized $12,000 for premiums. Guy, it just infuriates me because it is exactly what Lowell's talking about. It stifles business. It stifles the employer. It stifles people from doing the best that they can to be creative, we were created in God's image, and it stops people from being all they can be. And it just creates a hindrance upon all of it. Lowell, you had a comment on that.
Well, I just think that it's not only a disincentive, but the lack of competition between insurance carriers is part of the issue. We saw this the other night in one of the debates. Trump was saying that you need to remove artificial barriers such as state borders and create competition between carriers across state lines, and that would then create more of the free market influence, and that you would see rates go down. I believe that to be true. The other part of the problem is that I think, and Guy can answer this, is that it's sort of a one-size-fits-all solution under the Affordable Care Act, and essentially that, it includes all these things. You used to be able, much like car insurance, you could say, well, I want to buy a policy that only covers this. I want it liability only, or I want comprehensive. And here, every plan includes mental health. Every plan includes maternity. Every plan includes everything, whether you need it or want it or pay for it or not.
Is that true, Guy?
That is true.
So if I'm a postmenopausal female in my 80s, I'm paying for maternity coverage?
That's correct.
For crying out loud.
Yeah, and so and the government doesn't allow you to individualize the plans any longer.
So, Guy, go ahead.
All you can do is change your deductible. That's the only thing. There's 10 essential elements that every plan has to have.
So not only is government now telling us what we can't do, government's telling us what we must do, and by the way, your only choice is how much you're going to pay for it.
That's correct.
It's kind of like Henry Ford saying you have any color you want as long as it's black. The government's now saying, one, you have an individual and an employer mandate. You must buy insurance. Where does the government get off telling anybody what you must purchase? As
an employer or as an employee?
As an individual. They give you no option. And if you don't, we're going to penalize you. And we'll take it out of your tax refund. And the other thing is basically then, and here's the only thing you're offered to buy. It has to have these 10 things. It only comes in one flavor. You have to buy it. And even if you don't need it, it doesn't matter. You can be a 22-year-old male, just graduate from college. Your plan includes all these things.
So, Guy, I get to travel the state and hear small business owners and people's concerns with government. And a gentleman was telling, and I can't even remember what community I was in, he was saying that as an employer, they used to offer health insurance, and it was a benefit. It was a perk. It helped people want to work for their company. Now, since Obamacare, it's no longer a perk because everybody has to have insurance. Not only that, their quality of care has gone down and their cost has greatly gone up. So it's more of a burden for their employees and them as an employer.
Yes, that's pretty much it. I mean, insurance was designed, just like you said, years ago as kind of a way to, the employers offered it to employees to get good employees. Well, now it is the employees figure is an entitlement; they deserve it. So that's no longer a crutch for the small businessman or the businessman.
And so, go ahead.
And so they turn around and it's not beneficial. It's becoming a liability to the business.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them are discontinuing the insurance. Under 50 employees, they do not have to have, the small business does not have to offer insurance. So a lot of them are discontinuing it.
Which is a greater inconvenience to the men and women. I mean, it's just a downsize in quality. It's more expensive, but again, we're hindering all the things we've always celebrated in America: the good health care we have, the blessings that we've had. The government is just trouncing on them. Guy, what about all those insurance companies that are now pulling out of these agreements?
Well, we're having, like I said earlier, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they had 300 claims costing $47 million. On the individual side, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for every dollar they took in, they paid out $1.27. Okay. Now, a company cannot survive that very long. Okay. And the way that they're making, the group side is still very profitable, but the individual side is not, and that's the way it is on all of these insurance companies. They're struggling to stay alive. And my philosophy is the government is trying to make these insurance companies go broke so they can have a single-payer system. And so they are pulling out of the market. They're moving, United Healthcare is pulling out of Iowa. They're pulling out everywhere. Coventry, for example, they pulled out of all states except for 4. Iowa and Nebraska, it happens to be 2 of the states that they're still in. But in Iowa, they downsized and only offered, they took coverage away from 22 counties. I've got clients in them 22 counties that I'm scrambling to find affordable for them, and it's tough to find anything. Blue Cross is coming into the market, but they're only coming in 40 counties. And they're limited networks. The networks are getting smaller and smaller and smaller because the insurance companies are trying to contain costs, so they're making more restrictive deals with doctors and everything, which then translates to the individual himself. So it's just eroding. It's getting ready to explode. It cannot continue this way. We're having 40+% increases a year. I look for this open enrollment season, I look to lose more customers than I add on.
Yeah, I think if we go clear back to when Bill Clinton was president, Hillary was sort of tried to take charge of instituting a nationalized healthcare system, and it went nowhere. People were not interested. This, in my opinion, was designed to fail. It is designed to be implemented, to see exactly what's happening occur, and then for citizens hopefully to cry out and say, oh, you have to do something. And then we'll nationalize the healthcare. It'll become a socialized medicine, not unlike what we currently see in Canada, where we see many of the people in Canada who can afford it coming to America for care currently. People from across the globe come to America for care if they can afford it. It's going to be the same thing here. And when the government pays it all, then they will determine who should be at the head of the line, because now it'll come back to rationing. They will say, oh, well, you're 80. I'm not sure we're going to invest our healthcare dollars in your new hip because your usefulness and utility to society is limited. You have a downside. And so you'll start to see it as they'll pass it off all as this is just simple economics. But when it's your grandparent or your mother or it's yourself and you're being told, no, you don't get that or you're going to be way at the end of the line, look out.
And my concern is when government decides, they decide on their parameters, not our own, not the value of an individual or who they are, but whatever parameters they've decided. It is a dangerous path in which we find ourselves. Guy Lowry has been my guest. Lowell Scott, we've been talking about unaffordable health care. Hillary loves it, wants more of it. Trump has proven there's a better way. You've got a decision to make. Be encouraged and never be complacent.